In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to do a unit conversion. So there are a few different steps to take, and if you take a look at this flow chart over here, what unit are you starting with and what unit do you want to end with? Secondly, multiply by ratios that don't change the value of the original number. And lastly, make sure the previous unit gets canceled and gets you closer to the desired unit until you eventually get there. So I have two examples that I'm going to show you, and I'll explain those three steps that I just read a second ago. And in our two examples, I'm going to do one conversion from inches into meters and a second conversion from years into seconds. Now, when you're converting one unit to another, make sure you have a goal in mind. Why do you want to convert inches into meters? Why do you want to convert years into seconds? So say, for example, I'm doing a physics problem. I would want to convert inches into meters because meters is the standard unit that's used in all physics formulas. So make sure you are clear on why you want to convert the units, and then when you're sure you do want to, then you're going to start with the following steps. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and work out this first one, and then explain the steps in detail after I've completed it. All right, so that one was a fairly short one. So I only had to use two conversion factors. So when I'm taking a look at my setup, I'm going to start off with my original unit. If you want to put it over one, you can. It doesn't really make a difference. So basically what I do is I work from bottom to top to bottom to top, and I make sure the units cancel, and I make sure all of my ratios are two numbers that are equivalent to each other. So if I want to cancel out inches, I have inches up top and then on bottom. And I know that 1 inch is equivalent to 2.54 centimeters. So that's not a commonly known conversion, but that's one that I think is pretty useful. And now I'm currently in the unit of centimeters because inches is canceled out. And then I have centimeters on the top and centimeters on the bottom. And I know that centi is 100. So it's 100 centimeters per 1 meter. And then now you see all my units have canceled. And the only unit that's left is meters, which is the desired unit that I want to convert inches into. So what I'm going to do is I will multiply all the numbers in the numerator all the way across the top. So this one I can do in my head. So I do 100 times 2.54 times 1, and that just comes out to 254. Okay, then what I would do is I'd multiply all the numbers across that are in the denominator, which is just 1 times 100. Again, I can do that in my head, which you don't have to, but you can use a calculator if you'd like to. And then I have 254 divided by 100, which is equal to 2.54 meters. All right, so to recap my steps, what unit are you starting with and what do you want to end with? So I already had that goal in mind, and I multiply by ratios that don't change the original number. So these are my ratios that don't change the original number. So whenever I did these early on in high school, I never really understood how you're not changing this number, even though you're multiplying it and dividing it by a bunch of numbers. Basically, what you're doing is pretty much multiplying by 1. So the only number you can multiply a number by that doesn't change its value is 1. So this doesn't really look like 1 because one of the units is measured in something completely different. So this is 1 inch, but it's just represented as a different number because the unit is centimeters. But 2.54 centimeters is 1 inch. So this is basically a number that doesn't look like 1, but is basically a ratio of 1. Same thing with over here. 100 centimeters is 1 meter. And again, it doesn't look like it's 1. And the reason why it's not changing the value of it is because it's two numbers that are equivalent to each other, but they don't look equivalent because they're represented by a different unit. Okay, so you're not really changing the value of the unit. So 100 inches and 2.54 meters are exactly the same length or distance of measurement, but now the actual number value is different because you're measuring in a different unit. And then I make sure that the previous unit gets canceled and we get closer to the desired unit until we eventually get there. So like I said before, I kind of work down below and then up top, down below and then up top. Okay, so I want to cancel inches. I know 1 inch is equivalent to 2.54 centimeters. Then I want to cancel out centimeters and then up to meters and then so on. And then I'm eventually done. Okay, so I'll typically cross them out just as a double check to make sure that the only unit left is meters, because that's the unit that I wanted to convert my final answer into. And now I have a final answer of 2.54 meters. All right, so let's go ahead and try one more example and then see what we get converting 10 years into seconds. All right, so I've completed my conversion. Besides the last couple steps, we have 10 years. We know that 1 year, so we got years canceled out, one on the top, one on the bottom. Now we're in days, so 1 year is 365 days. And then we have days up top and then days on the bottom. We know 1 day is 24 hours, so now we're in the unit of hours. And then we have a unit of hours up top and then in the bottom. We know that 1 hour is equivalent to 60 minutes, so we're currently in the unit of minutes. And then the unit of minutes gets canceled because we have one on the top and one on the bottom. And the only one that doesn't get canceled is seconds, which leaves us in the unit of seconds. So again, for this one, usually what I do as far as plugging stuff into my calculator, I multiply everything all the way across the top to get my numerator. And for this number, I get a pretty large number. I get 3.15 times 10 to the 8th, and then the bottom is easy because you're just multiplying all ones. But if it was some other value, it would be a lot more significant. And then I take 3.15 times 10 to the 8th divided by 1, which still leaves me with 3.15 times 10 to the 8th seconds. Okay, so as I said before, basically all we're doing is we are finding ratios where the numerator and the denominator are equivalent to each other. Okay, these ones are fairly common ones. You may need a chart or other information if you're not quite familiar with all the different conversions. And then once you have all these conversions ready, kind of like in your head beforehand, you're going to make sure they cancel and take you one step closer. This one I knew I was getting closer because I'm shrinking down the unit from years to days. It's a smaller and smaller measurement, and I could tell that I was going to be leading myself up to seconds. And then in the end, I take everything in my numerator, multiply all across the top and have one big numerator. Do the same thing, multiply everything in the denominator to have one denominator, divide them for my final answer, and then make sure I do one last double check to make sure all my units are canceled. And they are, and I'm left with the unit of seconds, which is what I was looking for the final answer. And then the problem is complete. So I hope that was helpful in helping you understand and do a unit conversion. Thank you for watching and listening.